Inside Government for the fall 2017 semester here at Cayuga Community College and broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, and the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as Win 89, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. Tonight we have back in the studio with us Cayuga County Legislative Chairman Keith Batman, who represents the 7th Legislative District here in Cayuga County, which includes Ledyard, Scipio, and Springport. He is just completing his first term as a member of the legislature and is up for re-election this year. That you may think is an oddity. Why would we have him in here if he is running for re-election? As a standard practice, we do not have candidates for office on Inside Government unless they are unopposed, as is the case with Chairman Batman. We had this last year with John DeFrancisco. We've asked him on today to give us an update on several issues facing the county, including a county administrator and where they are in their search, putting in place a budget by the end of December, and other issues facing the county, including the issue of blue algae. Chairman, welcome back.
Great. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. So let's talk about the county administrator, because that may be one of the most, besides budget, is most likely one of the most important jobs the county legislature has. So Suzanne St. Clair has been gone for maybe, what, 9 months, 10 months now. Where are you in the search process for an administrator?
Yeah, well, let me even back up and tell you what we've done to get to this point, because we've approached it deliberately and carefully. So the first thing we did is that we engaged our department heads in a series of focus groups to really understand from them what they wanted to see in an administrator, why things had worked in the past, why things had not worked in the past. From that, we came up with a list of their concerns and the positives about the things. We then took that and we actually hired a consultant to meet with the legislature to help us process that information.
Now, is that the Center for Government?
No.
Oh,
this
okay. This is
before.
not CGR?
No.
Okay.
This was a gentleman out of the Tompkins County who'd done many similar things, and in fact had done a lot of work with the Business Industry Center at Cayuga Community College.
Okay.
So he helped us process all of that information as well as our perspectives. So that took several months. So at the end of that period, we then moved to the review of the job description, the parameters, the boundaries, and so on. We came up with a couple of guidelines that would take us forward. So once we did that, we put together a search committee that was composed of members of the community, members of the department heads, legislators, and those people began a search. They got, I think they received somewhere between 60 and 100 applications, which was great, because we were concerned that the number of applications would be few. But because the job had been, there had been high turnover, 3 administrators in about 10 years? Yeah, a combination of the turnover, a combination of the nature of the job given all the challenges and so on. But we got a lot of applicants, which was good. They narrowed it down to 5. And those 5 were sent to the legislature, and we're in the process now of going through those, interviewing those people, deliberating, and that's where we are at this point. So let's take each piece along the route. So as to the structural change, or the changes that you have recommended and the staff has recommended, implemented, some have thought, and I would say I'm one of these, is that when this was created originally, there were not deliberate, but in the essence to get an administrator on board, more time was spent on speed than deliberation. Would you agree with that? So designing the position, there were some structural faults put into it by accident, not necessarily deliberately, 10 years ago. Yeah, now of course I wasn't around 10 years ago, but my perception, perspective, on this is that whether there are structural problems or not, one can debate that. What there definitely are organizational and procedural deficiencies, and that's what we try to address. So in addition to just a straight job description, one of the things we came up with are a whole series of kind of boundaries. How are we going to approach relationships between department heads, the administrator, the legislature, department heads, the legislature. So just all of these relationships, and where are the boundaries, because those are the things that cause you problems. A job description can say, as you know, any number of things. The key thing is how do you implement that, and who respects what boundary in relation to that. That's what we worked hard on, and I think that will make a difference. And there should be this notation that there is a difference between a city manager, yes,
and a county administrator.
Yes.
And more than just legal. There are specific job description and job powers that are different.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's true, by the way, between a county executive like Joni Mahoney and a county administrator.
You've set up a committee. The committee has met, I should say, as a matter of disclosure, my father happens to sit on that.
Yeah.
Carmen sits on that, or has sat on that. They have sent you the names. Is their role done?
Yes.
In their process? So the interviews, how many interviews have you done? How many more do you have to go?
We've completed 5, and we've interviewed all 5 candidates that were recommended. And at this point, we're in the process of determining whether or not we're going to bring people back, how we're going to move forward.
So it could be bringing people back, making an offer, or starting over.
Yes, those would be the 3 choices, and I sincerely hope it's not the latter.
Do you think you'll have second interviews in some cases?
Yeah, I think we very likely will.
When would you, if you did second interviews, and again, this is campaign season. After this week, we start going with all the candidates. Obviously, this gets mixed in every 2 years, but for right now, it gets mixed in. Would you make an offer before Election Day,
right,
before the end of the year, or would you wait till the new legislature sits in January?
We'll make an offer when we're ready, when we certainly have the right candidate and are ready to move forward.
So whether it's before Election Day,
yes,
after Election
Day.
Day.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be evasive with that, but we're not going to artificially postpone a decision based upon the elections. On the other hand, we're not going to artificially try to speed up the process based upon the elections.
When would you hope to have somebody start?
About a month ago, from my perspective.
Well, so that leads to my next question. So who's running the county right now?
Well, right now we have a management team that's composed of me, Aileen McNabb Coleman,
who represents Owasco.
She represents Owasco and Senate.
Okay.
Ben Vitale
represents Montezuma, Troop, and the Port Barn area.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then Jim Orman, who's
County Treasurer.
So what we've done is we've kind of administratively divided up the county a little bit. So each person.
So what are you responsible for?
Well, I'm responsible for number one, overall coordination.
Okay.
The kind of public liaison, the job of the chair, and beyond that.
So let's say Ben Vitale. What's his?
Ben Vitale is, and we did it by committee, and I also do Health and Human Services committee. Ben is doing Public Works, and I would have to go through the list, but Public Works is the one that.
So in Legislator Coleman, McNichol is really she's the chair of your Ways and Means Committee. So she's doing the budget side. She's
doing the Ways and Means, department heads. I'm doing the budget. So it's divided up that way. Then we meet weekly to pursue issues of general concern in the county.
So several chairmen ago, when Ralph Stanbrook was there, and prior to that, there was a stipend, an extra stipend for the chairman because you did not have a county administrator. Are the 3 legislators, and I guess Mr. Orman, are you all getting extra compensation for this, or is it within the confines of what is your normal salary?
Yeah, no, it's the normal. Okay. We're not taking compensation for it.
So you, I think I had heard that the Center for Government Relations was met with you last week. Am I correct with the legislature?
Yes.
What was that on?
Well, that was not just the legislature, but it was in the entire college community, and the larger community was invited. I don't think we had any members from the community, the larger community, who come. But what we're doing with CGR is that we've taken a step back and said, we need to look at our organizational structure. We need to really examine.
And this is something you talked about well before Suzanne Sinclair left.
Yes.
You started this when you had when you originally were sworn in as chairman.
Yes. This
is one of the things you talked about.
Yes.
So just contextual, this is a 2-year.
Right. Yeah, thank you, because this is independent of the administrative search, although they're obviously related. But the idea of this is that we're an organization that has grown over the years without really any intent or thought. We simply, we're subject to what the state needs, what the federal government needs, and to some extent what the
From a planning perspective,
needs.
you would call it sprawl.
That's what we would call it, yeah. That's what I would call it. So the idea of this analysis and review is to look at how we organize ourselves, who reports to whom, how departments are organized both internally and how they relate to one another. So look at the total organizational structure. The CGR is doing that for us. And the reason we went outside is because we felt that we needed a couple of things. One is someone with real expertise in this area, and they have substantial expertise. And the second reason is we needed someone that had no dog in any particular fight, so that we had an objective view. So they've begun the process of interviewing department heads, interviewing legislators, looking at a variety of data and information, and they will be making a report on things that they think that we might consider doing to be more efficient, to save more money, increase communication. The meeting you referenced was kind of their first general report. Here's what we're doing, here's how we're doing it, and here's what you can expect.
So did they say anything that you thought, well, that's interesting, we haven't heard that before?
No, they didn't report specifically.
So they haven't gone to the, so when will they put recommendations out?
February.
Okay, so you'll have an administrator on board by that time.
Yes.
It won't have anything to do with that.
And in fact, in some respects, it's serendipitous timing, because what they will do is they will recommend a series of considerations. That the administrator then will be on board in order to really consider those and make them his or her own, but will have some insulation from the unpopular ones, because it's always nice to be able to say, this wasn't my idea,
right,
but here we are. And so I think that's going to work out very well.
So you said he or she, or him or her. So back to the search for a second. Male and females in the pot?
Yes.
Local, non-local? Local, would I say Cayuga County resident versus Central New York versus national? Yeah,
I think I'm trying to remember. I think I think they all have local, regional connections.
Okay.
None of them live in Cayuga County at the current moment.
Okay. And that will be a requirement?
Yes.
Okay. So let's turn to the budget, because normally we would have you here at this time. We'd start not with the search, but we would start with the budget.
Yes.
So your budget has to be adopted by about second, third week of December legally. Where are you in putting together the 2018 budget that takes effect on January 1st?
Well, we're moving along the schedule. I'm going to put out the final budget calendar the next week, which will include all the meetings and so on. I did that last year, which is the first time. We'd always done it ad hoc, but I'll have a full calendar next.
So who's putting the budget together itself?
Technically, that's my responsibility. So I'm working, of course, with department heads, with our budget director, Lynn Marinelli, and a number of other people to put it together. But technically, it'll be my budget.
Okay. So I guess it leads to a different. If you're putting it together, why do we need an administrator? It's not that you haven't had that question somewhere along the line.
Right. And I smile a little bit, because if you were trying to be chair and put the budget together and then do all of the other things, that would be the question. It's a big job to be chair of the legislature. It's a big job to do the budget. It's a big job to be the county administrator. And we have to remember that there are 4 of us filling in it for the administrator. Right. And so it clearly is a huge job. But I would say that the big reason, though, the big reason we need an administrator is I'm elected, as are all legislators. We come and go. We have term limits.
So there's an issue of consistency.
Absolutely. And, frankly, knowledge and ability. Some of us have experience in yes, budgeting, some of us don't.
So on the issue of term limits, you don't have them legally in place, but you have what we'll say is a gentleman's agreement, because you mostly, right now you have all but 14 are men, am I correct?
Yeah.
That may change, because there are several women running. Yes. We'll have them in the studio. Is there specific term limits that are in place that are binding for the legislature?
My understanding is your understanding, that we have an agreement that it's 3 terms, okay, but that it's not legally required. However, I know of no case where people have not respected it, and that is the expectation. Okay.
So going back to the budget,
yeah,
when do you think you'll release a document that people can look at, whether they're legislators, the public, right, or specific constituencies?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the exact timeline, and because I can't remember it exactly, we will have an initial draft the third, maybe the 4th week in October.
And then there will be a public hearing sometime in December, but in between committees will go through it.
Right. The public hearing on the budget will be in November, and I don't remember when, either the end of November, or the very early December.
Is when you would hope to adopt the budget?
No, that's when we'll have the public hearing. Then we'll have a couple of meetings after that. The legal deadline is December 20th, and so we would hope to adopt the budget the week before that.
Okay. So let me give you some math questions. You're 3/4 of the year, fiscal year in. How are you doing budget-wise now?
We're in very good condition. One of the things that committed last year, I worked very close with Suzanne last year to develop last year's budget, and one of the commitments is that, from my perspective, I wanted to stay within the tax cap. I wanted to restrict the draw on the fund balance, except for the one-time, the capital kinds of expenditures, roads, buildings, and so on. And I wanted the budget balanced. And I've said all along, and it remains true, that by the end of the year the budget will be operationally balanced. Now, it's clear to understand what that means. It's a $145 million budget. So that a balanced budget does not mean that revenues equal expenditures to the penny. What it means is within a few tens of thousands of dollars, it is balanced.
So let's take on the revenue side, are revenues separate from sales tax, but revenues that the county expects, are they on track?
Well, for good or bad, the revenues, except for sales tax, they are out of our control.
No, I understand, but from what you budgeted to
I see what you're saying.
To budget, I guess I would ask.
In this year, the places we took a hit this year were in the revenues. The state significantly cut reimbursement for the foster care, which hurt us. And that hurt us doubly because the state cut that reimbursement, and then we had an increase in cost. So we had the increased cost and substantial reduced revenue in that area. However, we experienced substantial increase in sales tax, and then moderate increases in some other areas.
So sales tax is up at this point.
Sales tax is up
to budget. How about expenses?
The expenses are just about on track. Yeah. What we found is the revenue items have kind of balanced out. The expenses we've been able to keep under control. With the exception, we had to spend an extra $1 million in the southern part of the county for the damage from the July storms.
So where does that money come from? Your fund balance?
That's why you have a fund balance.
Okay. It is literally the rainy day fund.
Right, exactly. And thank you for bringing that up, because I'll go through this. I take every opportunity to go through this, because we have a $21 million fund balance. And I hear all the time that, why do you need that? The unions will say, you have plenty of money, give us bigger raises. That's all kinds of reasons. And you understand that $21 million is a lot of money. But here's how the numbers work out for that. We have about $11 to $12 million cash flow need. Our money doesn't come in weekly,
it's not
bi-weekly.
Like a paycheck.
It's not. We get lots of money a couple times a year when people pay their taxes.
But you have outgo every week.
Yeah. So you've got to cover your cash flow, because if you don't do that, then you have to do short-term borrowing, which is very expensive. Go to a paycheck, the person to get your money and see what it costs you. So we have to have that coverage. So that's $11–12 million. We have to have a rainy day fund because of things like happen, that's the storms in the.
So there's some specific help that Cayuga County is providing, specifically to the Moravia, Niles area, which really got hit very heavily.
So, and the $1 million we're spending there are exclusively on our roads. That's how much damage we had on county roads. So you have to have money set aside for that. You have to have money set aside in case there's an economic downturn.
Right.
Because if what we have to do is pretty fixed. People expect us to provide the clear roads, public protection. The state expects us to provide the things like foster care, the public assistance, health planning. I mean, there's a whole range of things that we have to provide. If we have an economic downturn, that sales tax bottoms out, we have to have a way of easing out of that. from year to year. So you can't simply say, "Oop, our sales tax is down $2 or $3 or $4 million. We'll just cut $2 or $3 or $4 million in 1 year." So you take that 21 and you start seeing all the things you have to do.
It peels away.
It's not a lot of money.
Will most of the road repairs and items that you need to take care of in the southern part of the county be done this year?
We are hoping to get them, yes, because when the snow starts flying, the roads have to be in plowable condition. Yeah.
So as you're planning this year's budget, and I know this has been an issue for the last 2 budgets, you did not put the last 2 budgets together, so let me state that as a disclaimer, has been what is the tax cap number for 2018? Do you have a percentage number or a dollar amount that you can raise? Not that you are, but you can go to. Because this has been an issue, if I remember correctly, for the last 2 cycles.
Yeah, last year and year before last, the tax cap was under 1%. It was like 0.8 or something, and last year it was a little over 1. It looks like the tax cap this year will come in at about somewhere around the 2%.
So how much does that generate for you?
A percentage is about $350,000.
And with what you see on the horizon, does that mean that you can do a budget without going into your fund balance? You have had, the county has traditionally, for the most part, done some type of accessing the fund balance over the last 10 plus years.
Well, the 2 budgets I've had the most input on since I've been chair, we did not do that.
You did not, okay.
And that's my commitment, that this budget will be balanced, it will be under the tax cap, and we'll preserve.
So as far as you're concerned,
services.
a balanced budget is not using anything.
That's
out of
correct.
the fund. Okay.
Right. And when I say that again, I want to go back so that very clear. When I say not using the fund balance, this does not mean not using $1 of the fund balance. What it means is that you do a budget, the $145 million budget over the course of a year. You will have flexes. It'll go up and down, and there's some things you can control. Position opens up, you don't fill it for a month. Those kinds of things. So if we start the year with which we did this year, we started the year this year with a technical draw of the fund balance of about $350,000. At the end of the year, the draw on our fund balance will be somewhere between $20,000 and 0. That's what I mean by a balanced budget.
But the vast majority of your budget you don't control.
That's correct.
If you had an idea of do you have any idea of what year, I think you can control road patrols and a couple of other things here and there. How much is that large budget can you control?
Yeah, I think the number,
you being the county.
Yeah, the number that's usually thrown around is about 30%. We have some control over. But importantly, and you touched on this, and it's absolutely true, the 30% we control are the things that people most want. And I suspect that's not unplanned. So the road patrol,
right?
Boat
patrols.
We could cut those out, and we get no state aid for that. The highways, we get some state aid for that, but most of that cost is our cost. When we plow a road, it's our cost.
And they don't necessarily increase that every year.
Exactly. Yeah.
At this stage of the game, is your or the process, I shouldn't say game process, are you foreseeing any layoffs?
No.
Okay. Let's ship 3 other quick items. We've got about 5 minutes left. You are running for re-election?
I am.
Are you surprised you don't have a Republican opponent?
I'm very surprised. It's a Republican district. I was very surprised.
So are you still out there campaigning?
I've begun some initial literature distribution.
So you're not taking this for granted?
Absolutely not. No, I will be starting door to door probably next week. Yeah,
I think if I remember correctly, Mark Farrell was not a candidate at one point, and there was a write-in.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that's a wake-up call. But more importantly, elections are an opportunity to get out and meet voters. And one of the things we want to do is to represent people as best we can. And the only way you can do that is if you've got some idea of what they want, think, and desire.
If you are re-elected and the Democrats continue to keep control of the legislature, would you seek another term as chairman?
That I don't know. I have to think. I'll have to think about that. Not sure.
Other item that is on here is this issue of water quality, and I know you're well aware. How many of the lakes that Cayuga County has some relationship with or touches have blue algae at this point?
All of them, except for the lake in this is terrible, in Sempronius.
Okay, so
that's terrible that I can't remember the name of it. Forgive me, some
Okay.
cronies. But so all of the Finger Lakes now have had
so is the
blooms.
county involved dealing with blue algae?
Yes.
How so?
Well, we support the Aula and the other testing efforts in Owasco Lake. We have the best septic system inspection program in the state. We're a model for other people, and these things all contribute to nutrients. We have a very active water quality management agency. Every county has them. Ours is very active. They've produced recommendations on manure management, and just today they were set to vote on some recommendations having to do with construction, ditching, and those kinds of things.
So do you see, because of this issue of blue algae, more emphasis on dealing with the issues of development and agriculture from a regulatory standpoint?
At this point, we're looking at enforcing the rules and regulations we have, and then encouraging people to follow best practices in every area. Agriculture is a very difficult area for local governments to impart any kind of regulation.
Because that's required, but the state of New York has to act in that case.
Yes.
Do you think now that Skinny Atlas has now got blue algae that this will drive some discussion in Albany more than it has in the past when it's just something like Owasco Lake?
Right. I think it'll drive discussion, but I wouldn't look to the state to solve our problems.
What do you think is causing the blue algae? I'm not asking you for scientific, but in your view, from what you hear and what you have been able to digest, what do you think is causing the blue algae problem?
Well, it's the interesting thing about the blue-green algae is that the dynamic of it is more complicated than regular algae, which is regular algae is caused by phosphorus. There's just no question. It's a link, a causal
runoff,
chain.
Whether it's from farms or from
blue-green algae is
blacktop.
People are uncertain what it is. One of the things that I think is clear, without question, is runoff, nutrient load plays the underlying foundation cause for all growths in the lake. If you don't introduce foreign material into the lake, then you're not going to have foreign material in the lake.
So that really means dealing with some regulations at some point.
Or getting people to do things voluntarily.
Which they haven't been able to do.
So far.
Last question real quickly. I'm asking every government person who sits there. Voters next month get to vote on a constitutional convention referendum. They'll create a constitutional convention in at the end of 2018 or more likely 2019. Do you support that?
I don't have an official position on that yet. I'm still thinking. I understand the issues on both sides, and I have to simply have to digest more.
Do you think the system is broken? The Albany system is broken?
I think we have a challenge when it comes to our state and federal levels, and I think it's too bad things don't work at those levels as well as they work locally, but they don't. And so the question is not does something have to be done. The question is how do we best go about doing it, and what's the risk benefit, and that's kind of what I think each person has to decide. A constitutional convention opens up everything. So many good things can happen from that,
but they still need the voters to approve.
And that's the safety, as you and I have spoken in many times, that what the constitutional convention will do is make recommendations for a statewide vote. So that it's not as if you're going to get a group of people together that are going to make decisions. They will make recommendations, and so that makes a huge difference.
Who's in the room making those recommendations is a question in itself.
That's the other downside. Unfortunately, what happens is that it's a congressional or a state senate district-based vote, which means the concern many people have, it will simply be the politicians in Albany that are populating the convention.
And they'll just get paid twice.
Exactly.
We want to thank Cayuga County Legislative Chairman Keith Batman for joining us over the last half hour. Give you the opportunity to, we'll be back in November with some normal runs of Beyond the Front Page and Inside Government. If you're ready to talk about budget at that point with you or any of your triumvirate, we'd love to have you on for that.
Okay. Thank you.
We will be back in just a moment with Beyond the Front Page for a discussion of the West Middle Project with Unity House's Liz Smith as well as Susan Kimmel from 2+4 Management. We'll be back on Thursday of next week with our first of our candidate forums. For the first one is the county's 5th legislative district, and that has Democratic challenger Melissa Jenkins facing incumbent Republican Paul Pinckney. And they are both planning to be in the studio for a forum next week. Those questions will be asked by Jeremy Boyer of The Citizen. We'll have three more legislative forums after that. We will be having the Niles and Moravia district. One of the candidates has decided not to attend, so we'll have Ms. Gore in for a 30-minute interview. Then we'll have the seat that is up in Wheatsport that is somewhat, people say, is competitive, as well as one open seat in the city, and then one where there's a challenger and an incumbent. And then on October 31st, yes, Halloween, we'll have the race for City Council. And all 4 candidates have agreed to attend that forum as well. Again, the questions will be asked by Jeremy Boyer. In the meantime, if you have ideas for Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page after Election Day, let us know what you think, who you'd like to have us on, or what you'd like us to ask about. You can do so at contacting us at cozguytho@aol.com or Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. We hope you'll stick around in just a moment for Beyond the Front Page, but otherwise have a good evening and a great tomorrow.